My name is Drummer. We'll stand over here. I'm an organizer, and they call me a tech organizer at Teamwork Englewood. I'm going to talk about what that means in a minute. But Teamwork Englewood was founded in March of 2003. We just celebrated 10 years of existence with basically no fanfare because there's a lot of work to do, right? In 2003, LISC Chicago teamed up with St. Bernard Hospital, which is a very old, like more than 100-year-old hospital run by an order of French-Canadian nuns in the Englewood community. Also with the, at the time, Park National Bank and Englewood United Methodist Church. And the three entities came together with LISC support and founded Teamwork Englewood. And the idea was to build an organization that would unite residents and various facets in the neighborhood, organizations, other institutions, including Kennedy King College, to improve the quality of life in the West Englewood and Englewood community areas. This is, we all know about Englewood if you're, who's from Chicago, or, okay, right? So we all know about Englewood. It's like the symbolically, you know, it's a symbolic like neighborhood that is, you know, suffering with drugs and gang violence, suffering from failing schools, right? High crime, foreclosure. I think an article called us ground zero for Chicago's foreclosure crisis, which isn't exactly accurate. And that tends to be the case, right? The data doesn't really justify Englewood's reputation, right? There are many neighborhoods who have had an increase in crime. Englewood has had a drastic decrease in crime, and yet still, just as recently, I think as last night, WGN decided to run a feature-length story on how bad Englewood is, where the best news that they could find was children who tracked down a cop to show them a wounded dog that needed help, right? They didn't find Englewood Codes, they didn't find Teamwork, they didn't find the Resident Association of Greater Englewood, they didn't find the fact that there's a circus coming to Ogden Park, a midnight circus. They'll be camped out in one of our parks all weekend. They didn't find the STEM schools that we already have, not the ones that are coming down the pipeline. They didn't find the block leaders that have been working for many, many years and decades, keeping their block strong, right? And so at Teamwork Englewood, we work with block club leaders, local organizations, and the city of Chicago, and funders to ensure that we're all working and rowing in the same direction. Some may have a motorboat, some may have a paddle, right? Some may be swimming, right? But as long as we're moving in the same direction, right, we can get the job done. I started working at Teamwork Englewood in 2010 under the auspices of the Smart Communities program that came through recovery funding. Remember the recession? Right? The Department of Commerce had a whole bunch of recovery money, and part of it was to, in some areas, lay down broadband infrastructure, right, in rural areas of the country, and also some suburban and urban areas that did not have broadband. In Chicago, what we saw was that there was a lot of broadband capacity in the city, but the broadband adoption was very low in some neighborhoods. And so they took 5 communities that were representative of this problem. One community was Englewood, which includes actually 2 neighborhoods plus a piece of another one, right? So you have Englewood, immediately to our west is Chicago Lawn, immediately to our south is Auburn Gresham, right? So in the southwest you had a relatively diverse Chicago Lawn community, primarily black Englewood and Auburn Gresham communities. Moving up north, we have Pilsen, right, which is primarily Mexican and immigrant, and we have some, I guess, a few other folks in Pilsen as well. Then we have a predominantly Puerto Rican and black community in Humboldt Park and the greater Humboldt Park area. And so those 5 neighborhoods banded together under the auspices of the Smart Communities program. The idea was to have, on the one hand, computer labs. That wasn't just a bank of computers that you come in and get on Facebook on. That lab had an instructor, not a lab resource person, but somebody who was holding classes, almost like every day, right, on basic internet use, basic Word, Excel, PowerPoint, online banking, right, job searching online, right, email. When we started, we had a lot of seniors, but what we saw in Englewood was that as we were teaching these classes, particularly when we went out into the schools, I was finding people that were my age. I just turned, well, I didn't just turn 30. I wish I just turned, but I turned 30 this year, right? And there were people my age that were in the class that needed to set up email, right? They were trying to figure out, right, how to get their resume right, store their Google Drive so they can send it out whenever from their mobile phone, right? And I'm going to come back to why that's the case in a minute. So on the one hand, we had this Family Net Center, and a Family Net Center manager who was an instructor, not just a lab aide, but somebody who was teaching basic computer skills that were sorely needed, right, or greatly needed. We also had a business resource network. We had really small businesses in the area that were not using the web or technology in general. You know, I know there are some benefits in Cook County of only accepting cash, right? We have really high taxes, right? But in some cases, we were seeing that businesses were losing money because they weren't adopting technology. So we had a business resource network focusing exclusively on reaching out to small businesses, ranging from the hardware store to the daycare provider, and using technology to improve their business practices and cut costs and possibly increase revenues. We also had a component called the Digital Youth Summer Jobs Program, where we took about a dozen youth from every neighborhood and attempted and did our best to slide them into tech, kind of tech-related positions. A lot ended up doing non-tech stuff, but I think we did our best. I think we did a pretty good job of ensuring that the employers weren't just having the high school students sit in the corner all summer, but actually engage them. So we actually had, I think Chicago One had a dentist that had the high school student literally digitize a lot of paper data into Excel. And that the high school student taught the dentist like how to use Excel and things like that. So that was like one of the best stories from that Chicago One. Then you have my component. Actually, there's another component called the portals, where we have this website that I'm not going to bring up called Englewood Portal. The idea is how do we use the web to tell the good stories out there, so that ABC and WGN and the Tribune and sometimes don't own the narrative on our neighborhood. So how do we own our own narrative? Well, we put up a website called Englewood Portal, which is developed by Webatex. And the idea is that this is an online platform that anybody can post to. Of course, we have an editor. You can't just post anything, right? So anybody can post to it and get their news and information out. And then there's my component, which is the tech organizer. My job was to build relationships. It was like the best job ever, right? Build relationships with community leaders. And you know, I worked on campaigns. I worked on issue-based campaigns, political campaigns, and issue-based campaigns. My job was not to find leaders and get them to move in the direction I wanted to move in. My job was to literally ask the very honest question: what are you doing, and how can I help? What role does technology play in your efforts of bringing more parents into the school? What role does technology play in you consolidating the base of block club leaders under the idea of a block club federation, and ensuring that everybody's on the same page as far as community meetings? Everybody has information they need to get out to their blocks, right? What role does technology play in a young person's career, right? And so it's very cool. I got to build amazing relationships with strong local leaders, and just kind of pretty much being like the geek squad for organizing, right, in Englewood. It was really exciting. And I learned a lot.